To another Fan the Flames live. Today, I'm talking with Lisa Fearon, the chocolate lady, the chocolate coach, uh, the cacao lady. I'm sure she has lots of different sort of titles that people might give her. But I know Lisa for quite a while now. We met as part of her coaching training, and we've been friends ever since. And most recently, I took part in one of her ceremonies. So we'll talk a little bit about that too as we go through. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. It's great. It's great to have you on. And I know that when I said to people that I was going to go and do cacao, a lot of people had this idea that I was just going to go and have like a drink of hot chocolate. So I'm really curious as to when you think about cacao, how might you describe it to people?
Yeah, so I mean, it is essentially a cup of hot chocolate, but it's pure chocolate. And so it's 100% pure raw chocolate, and we call it cacao for that reason, to differentiate it between cocoa, which is like, your kind of average hot chocolate. And so the way that we work with the cacao, this pure chocolate, is it's unprocessed. There's nothing added to it, and it's raw. So in that sense, it has all of its active like plant compounds and all the ingredients that have this really powerful effect on the mind and the body. And so we use ceremonial cacao, which is basically it's grown in a certain way in like sacred lands. So generally, I trained in Guatemala with cacao, so that cacao is grown in highly volcanic lands and in the kind of Mayan traditional way. And then the cacao I'm recently using now is from Peru, from the Amazon. And so again, that's just been traditionally used, as an ancient practice and an ancient plant medicine. So this is what we use, yeah.
And so when you talk about it, sort of where it's grown and it having its natural compounds, what do you sort of think the impact of that is upon it as a drink as opposed to something that's been processed?
I mean, so one, it has it's a superfood, so it has massive nutritional value because of the fact that, all of the plant processes are still working on the body. I could talk forever on just that alone. Like, it's interesting now, a lot of my family, like even my granddad, I mean, that's quite a story in itself. I realized he worked with cacao when he was young. He's from Jamaica. So I feel like this is something that was always in our family. But yeah, it's reintroduced it back to him again, and he actually works with it, for a nutritional aspect, really. But I think, unfortunately, the processed chocolates that we tend to get in the supermarkets are so processed, and they have so much added to them that the actual cacao that you get is probably not even, it's below 10%. It's so minimal, you won't get anything from it, and it's mass produced and heat processed, so it's just all deactivated and not able to work in the body.
And so when we talk about it working in the body, I know that part of what you do is the ceremonies around it. So would you say that the ceremony is what's needed to get it to activate in the body? Can we activate it without taking part in the ceremony?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to say that I think the cacao allows us. So when I say it works in the body, it works in the mind, it works in the brain, and it works on the body as a whole. So for example, it releases all of our natural happy hormones. So the serotonin, the endorphins, endorphins we might release when we're exercising. Serotonin is that real happy boost of hormone, and it helps us feel awake. And then actually when you do certain meditations, it can actually release naturally dopamine and oxytocin, dependent on what we're kind of setting our thoughts and our kind of focus on. It's highly antioxidant, so it oxygenates the body, so it really allows our body to work more at its potential, and to really kind of drive all of our systems to work. So it's really good for the cardiovascular system. It's actually been said now by the medical professionals, 5 to 10 grams of cacao is really good for the heart and heart health. It boosts the circulation and oxygenation to the brain. And it's said that it actually activates parts of the brain that we wouldn't normally use. So this is kind of like our creative center of the brain. And, and this allows, so they say the right brain. I know there might be some medical people who work in neurosurgery, who might say differently, but, I guess you're kind of collectively saying the part of our brain that has, our intuition and our creative expansive thinking. So this is more of an open perspective of thinking, something that we work with coaching to kind of help people open up. It really enhances that part of our thinking, part of our brain. And so essentially they say, it forms this mind-body connection, and it kind of moves us away from the monkey mind, and I guess the fight or flight type of thinking, the survival brain, which I feel like, especially the last 2 years with the pandemic and a lot of fear that comes through, that is hypersensitive, and that's firing off on us all the time. I mean, they even say, with the advertisements on television, these are kind of designed, with the psychology behind it to tap into that need, and then like needing to get that need fulfilled quickly. And so it kind of moves us away from that part of our brain and into more just being and trusting. So it's a really beautiful effect that it has on the body in that sense. And so when you speak about that, it's all based on intention, how we work with it. So, I use the cacao ceremony initially. I like to see it as a point to guide people how they can work with it, how they can connect with the cacao and establish that kind of that bond. So almost like activating that potential that they have within them. And we can talk more on that because it's just so amazing. And then from that moment on, when you know how to work with it, it's just a self-practice. So I like to actually use it, so for example, I've just had my cacao before we started. I set my intention of how I want to be. I want to, just kind of get out my own way and just allow, what comes to flow without judgment. And, so I kind of intend how I want to be and kind of how I want to show up. And then the cacao just allows us to kind of be in the right space to allow that more.
I love that. I love this idea that it's just allowing us somehow to tune into our creativity more, and it's allowing us to tune into our heart space more. And it's just kind of, as you say, it's allowing us to get out of our own way and be open and explorational and expansive. And then I guess in that openness, we're able to see more, to witness more, to experience more than we normally would when we're sort of closed down or focused in on something. It just kind of opens that gateway, and I think it opens that heartway as well, just to allow us to connect with perhaps others, or connect maybe with ourselves more as well.
Yeah.
I think there's something really interesting about how do we connect with ourselves and get into our bodies and kind of experience that, as opposed to getting stuck in our minds and in our thinking space.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's moving us away from the cortisol kind of producing hormone and more into, these bliss hormone states. And so therefore, when like the cacao shaman who I trained with, I worked with, he always used to say, it moves us out of our heads and into our hearts. And in that way, into being, into feeling. And so, just to kind of explain to anyone who's never heard of this before, drinking this chocolate in the form that it is, essentially, it allows us to just relax and just let go a little bit, like, because I think we've got so many thoughts firing off and we're holding down all these things and whatever. And it just allows that kind of that protection or whatever to kind of just ease off, and for us to just relax. And so when we do the ceremonies, I feel like that if nothing else, you realize how deeply relaxing feels, how just letting go and just being feels, and it feels amazing. And so I feel like, so when we're in that position where we're just really, really relaxed and we're really in tune with ourselves, we then, we connect to ourselves on a deeper level. So I say when I guide the cacao ceremony or the meditations that we do, it allows people to have a deeper sense of self-awareness, sense of self. And with that, then we can then get these realizations as to, I generally guide people to look at, what it is that they really want from their lives. So with my coaching, I trained in transformational coaching. I absolutely love creating, you know, life-changing experiences for people, or, you know, just like experiences that can help them expand themselves
Yeah,
and
yeah.
realize, you know, their potential within themselves. And I just, when I, you know, encountered and discovered cacao, I realized this just like opened it up so much more in such a beautiful way. So yeah, I feel like with them, when I do these ceremonies, it allows people to really connect to themselves that deeply for the first time that they've probably ever done, that they see how amazing they are, they see how beautiful they are, they see how well they've done. You know, you see yourself from a different place, from deep within. And I think that's where the real power comes.
And there's something so, I guess, beautiful about seeing ourselves in that way, because we're caught up in this busy rat race, or we might be, because some of us may not be in that space. But there's something so amazing about kind of noticing how busy we have been when we become so relaxed. There's a, as you said, it kind of taps into that bliss feeling. So I know when I took part in your ceremony the other week, the other month, I'm not sure when it was now, but there was that kind of, oh yeah, isn't it? It's just kind of cool just to be here and just to be in tune with oneself. And the kind of the visualization you took us on was one that was kind of more moving upwards and exploring outwards, as opposed to something that's about going inside of the self. But even though it was about moving outside, there was still that real connection with the self and who we are. And I guess as a coach, you're able to use this to help people think more expansively and to get out of their way, but also to tune into, I guess, what the body is talking about, what the body is looking for, but also what they're truly looking for as well. Because I think a lot of the time we cloud our vision with the idea of where we think we're supposed to go, as opposed to where we really want to go.
Yeah. And I think as well, we play small. You know, I think a lot of the time there's that beautiful quote by Mariam Williamson, you know, about sort of, yeah, our greatest fear is like our potential, because we've not really ever, you know, been taught how to connect to that. And I think, you know, like my the way that I work with cacao, I mean, I discovered cacao in a beautiful way. You know, I was diagnosed with a chronic pain condition, and it's called fibromyalgia. And I couldn't believe it. I was an athlete, you know, up until then. I was told this when I was 20. And so I had like 2 flare-ups basically, and on the third, which was in 2012, I was actually told by pain consultants, because I'd been trying everything, you know, hypnotherapy, acupuncture, nutrition, herbalism, whatever it was, like, and all the other conventional, you know, mainstream stuff. And I remember being told by a pain consultant to stop chasing miracle cures and to face facts, and this is what I had. And I needed to pace my life. I needed to realize that, you know, how I was before is not how I can be anymore. I was actually told before, so I worked in medicine. Before I joined the profession I did, I was told by my own GP that it was too physically demanding and I wouldn't be able to do it. So luckily, I don't like to accept when people tell me what I can and can't do. I'm quite stubborn in that way, and I refused to accept it. And I actually did the training, and you know, and it was difficult. So I worked in surgery and anesthetics. I've been doing it for 20 years now. So I did do it and I succeeded. But it came with a lot of challenges. But this time, this third flare up, I was actually told, you know, that they wanted to do all sorts of things. I had really painful shoulder impingements and tendonitis and loads of other things, and constant pain and the fatigue. They the last thing that they wanted to do, I was on muscle relaxants, pain, like morphine based painkillers, all of the stuff. They wanted me to go on antidepressants, you know, because I was getting just, I needed something. And sedatives like were the next point of call. And then I saw a consultant who said the impingements was because my collarbone and my first rib were too close together. So they were going to remove my first rib. And I think that then I was like, what on earth? This cannot be all that there is. And so I went on this huge push for a quest for answers. I randomly found myself in Guatemala. I found a retreat that did, all the things that I knew were helping, the yoga and meditation. Meditation I found randomly in a pain management group I was in, which was interesting because I was very young. The average age was probably about 60, and the issues they had was arthritis and this kind of thing. And the exercises we had to do was just, I was just so down with the fact that this is where I was at. But the one thing I think the takeaway from that was learning about mindfulness. And actually, the pain I used to have was like predominantly in my shoulders. I could feel it actually move around. So with this mindfulness, I realized that it wasn't always present in the one area. So therefore, like, surely there's a way I can remove it from everywhere. So it was, it wasn't permanent. That was a big thing for me. So I wanted to look more into that. And it just happened on this retreat I did, which was amazing in itself. I discovered this cacao shaman. At the time, I really wanted to find the big plant medicines that everyone was saying were going to wipe it all out and, start afresh. I didn't find them. I found chocolate, which felt crazy, especially when I was told by a pain consultant to stop chasing miracle cures. And I found myself, sat with this shaman who wasn't even indigenous. He was like from Texas, and with a hot chocolate, drink. But it was absolutely profound. I learned so much about the root of pain, and actually how we can get to the bottom of where pain is created, or listen to our body and the message our body gives to us. So that was amazing. I mean, so that changed it was just life-changing for me. I left there. I was meant to travel all around Central America. I was like, hold on a second, I've got to go back there. This is, and also I had like a big bag of painkillers or all sorts of different things that were felt like a lifeline for me. I didn't need them. I was able to totally get rid of them from that one session. I went back with him and I trained for a year. I did 3 sessions a week, working on my own stuff, my own healing, my own, inner journey work. And then I started to learn how to, use it and help other people and work with other people. So that was totally life-changing. And I think just to go into what my inspiration was, when I came back, I was like, I can't go back into the medical field the way I was, because I want to help people. But I knew this was like the last resort, but for a lot of people there could be something before that. And I really feel really fortunate and blessed, I guess, that I'm not religious, but I feel like the surgery that I witnessed opened my eyes to the fact that there's something really powerful in our bodies. We can talk about it being heart opening, which is beautiful and has significance, but also and the work on the heart, it kind of it boosts the circulation, but the power of the heart. I've seen heart surgery, cardiac open heart surgery, for many years. I've seen hundreds of these procedures, and I've seen with my own eyes how our heart looks, how it functions, that whole system. And it's a miracle for me. It's a miracle how they do the cardiac bypass surgery, and they have to stop the heart and stop the lungs, and they have this machine, the bypass machine, that takes over the functions of the heart and the circulatory system. The machine is huge to do the job of this little, it's the size of your fist. And it always used to absolutely blow my mind. It's literally it's so moving. The first one I saw, I was emotional. There was such a beautiful insight into how powerful our body is. And it made me realize, I think, when I started working with the cacao and how people said it connects you to your heart center, that our heart, as well as other functions of our body, there's an invisible intelligence that makes that happen. It happens when we're asleep. It happens all through the day. We don't have to set an alarm on our phone or remind us to beat that heart. It just happens. And there's loads of these subconscious functions that happen that I believe is this invisible intelligence that we can't see. I guess there's no explanation for it, but how about if we tap into that? Can you imagine if we tapped into that and started actually using that, that power of life and life force, and start to create through that? And that's what I feel like the cacao ceremonies especially the ones that I guide through, that's what I've been guided to do, you know, and my, you know, the visualization and the meditation I've created is to connect people to their hearts, their heart space in that way, like this invisible intelligence that wants the best for them and has this like infinite potential that we just aren't even going close to tapping into, because we're going from our brain and that's very restricted and programmed, whereas the heart, when, you know, like in all this expansion, it just goes on and on.
There's so much in there, but I want to dive into some of that, or just reflect some of that, I guess. That so one of the reflections here is the journey that you went on. So, you know, a lot of the times on Fan the Flames, I'm talking about this idea of, you know, what's that little spark in you that needs to be fanned? What's that little flame that needs some encouragement, some attention to it? And it feels like that you know, when you went to Guatemala, there was this kind of this space that you saw, and you went, "What can I follow here? What can I do here?" And it allowed you to grow into the kind of the bright flame that you are now. And but also there was something about the challenge, that physical challenge that you had, the illness, was also giving you a direction. It was almost like by listening, by not just challenging it and pushing it away, or just by accepting the medication, but by exploring. So what does this mean for me? What's going on for me? What can I explore here? What's deeper here for me? That also allowed you to go on a journey, and you were open to that journey. And it's really interesting that, you know, one might think of cacao as something that's quite spiritual, and you have a very medical training, and you were able to kind of fuse these things in their work and how they look. So you're able to kind of bring both sides of yourself to this work. So there's something here about, we don't have to forget who we are. We don't have to leave behind who we are, but we can use who we are to grow and to develop and to become more.
Yeah.
And then that piece you said there about that body awareness, the body wisdom, you know, it's one of the things that I'm really interested in right now when I talk about physical intelligence and the work that I'm doing with Claire Dale, and this idea that there's so much information in the body and it's talking to us all the time, but are we pausing to listen to it? And I guess part of what the cacao allows us to do is to pause and to listen to the information within the body.
Yeah. And I think it's giving ourselves permission to do that and to slow down that little bit. You know, they say it's the gap between the thoughts where the magic happens, you know, where you get it's when you're in the shower, when you get that idea, and, you know, all these famous inventors or whatever, it was either in their sleep or, you know, like on the toilet or something crazy, where they've got these like invention ideas or whatever. It's where we switch off and we are, that the amazing things come through.
And that thing about permission is something that's come up a few times in conversations, where people talk about, how do we give ourselves permission, or, you know, how do we take permission and go, right, this is what I'm giving myself, my body, my mind permission to do, and then going off and doing it. It's really interesting that we kind of have to give ourselves permission, or we seek out permission to do things.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the biggest things I've noticed as well is, and why a lot of people buy the cacao from me, so, you know, either the ceremony or the powder, is this move now from the coffee culture that we have, which is like when you wake up, and, you know, it's always interesting when I'm, you know, traveling around wherever, and you're in the train station and the big queues and the people are looking like zombies and they need their coffee, and this feeling of needing to have the coffee to wake up and to be ready for our day. And you know, I love coffee, so you know, it's one of these, but we've been kind of programmed into this thing of, this is how a morning routine is. And what I'm noticing with myself and other people is, when actually you kind of move away from that and have the cacao, the coffee, I feel like we don't really generally have a mindful time with coffee. It's like, get it down and go. Or you might go to a cafe and chat to people, but having like that pause time to reflect and go inward and kind of feel our way into stuff. Whereas the cacao, it just has that different way of kind of being, and then you just start your day in a totally different way.
And, you know, this sort of speaks to the idea of what's one's morning routine, and how do we choose to begin our days. Because I think there's something really interesting about we roll out of bed and we can get caught up in a routine of things that we just do without ever thinking about, well, what's the intention behind this? What is it? How do I want to set myself up for the day? Apart from just getting the coffee down me to try and fire me up with caffeine, but how do I want to begin my day? What do I want to get out for my day? My intention for the day. It's one of the things for me with my morning coffee. It's actually part of my quiet time. It's part of I sit with my journal, my cup of coffee, take a few sips, make some notes, check out what the trees are doing, and I have a different relationship with it, I guess. But that's come over time because it used to be just, drink the coffee. But now I have a routine in the morning that coffee is part of. It's a kind of a different routine, a different setup for the
Yeah.
day. So it's interesting about, you're talking a lot about the intention and how do we create an intention that sits with our morning routines and gets us ready for our day, that we don't just need to externally drive it, but we can internally drive it as well.
Yeah. And this is where it can really kind of enhance, the way that we live and the routine. So, I feel like there's so much power within it, as a kind of, a day-to-day kind of work, living with intention. And when I coach, my kind of passion is to help people, live from their highest potential. There's something I've started saying now, which I find interesting. Like I've come from working, I guess 16 years of putting people to sleep for a living, as in anesthetics. And now it's my passion and my mission to wake people up to the power and potential that they hold.
I love that.
And when we come from that space, and it's like really thinking like, what's going to really serve me? What's going to like help me be my best self? Like, how can I be at my full potential today? You start to then intentionally create, a different routine or, go about your day and show up in different ways.
Because there's, as you were saying that, it's like there's a sort of an actual physical putting people to sleep, but there's also that metaphorical putting people to sleep and how we're not awake to our surroundings and how you've kind of gone from one way of being and swung the pendulum the other way and gone, right now it's about waking people up. I've done the sleep bit and the healing bit, and now it's about waking up and following the potential piece. And I wonder how many people need to have that moment of waking up to their potential and how they wake up to that potential. Because I think often and you've already said this, but we're kind of afraid of the potential. We're afraid of what we might create, perhaps for fear of it going wrong or it being broken or it moving us away from where we are, and where we are feels quite safe. So moving into that uncertainty space. But there's something beautiful there of, how do we wake up to our potential? And, whether that's through cacao or through meditation, because I know you also do sort of those beautiful visualizations that you take people through as well. So it's like that. Yeah, I'm a bit caught in that. How do we wake up?
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, it's as much as we can move from our head and into our heart, like out of our, and I think it's having that realization that, the way that we live tends to be through the filters of what we've been told, if we're not careful, we can live almost like a default life that's already been chiseled out for us from, the people who brought us up or the people around us. And it's really about kind of checking in with ourselves as to what it is that we really want. And what, I'm not very fluffy as a person. I've, come from a scientific background, but I always feel like, I feel like most people have that, something that makes their heart sing. And isn't that the beauty of life, to do as much as we can around that feeling that lights us up. And I feel like a lot of people potentially don't feel like they can do that, or they're trapped in a job where they feel like they have to do the job in order to get the thing. And actually, how many times do you end up getting stuck in that and you never get the thing you're, hopefully hoping to get? I think the pandemic has kind of shown that, we've all had all of our core beliefs shook, and especially, the hierarchy of our basic needs, they were all shook. Need for certainty and variation and significance, all those kind of things. And so I think a lot of people have been going with, I think myself as well, you slip into this survival mode. and you're just getting through, and this is playing small, and just kind of, yeah, just it's almost like a bit of an existence. Whereas, you know, really we're meant to thrive. When in nature, we're meant to thrive and grow and expand, you know, otherwise we're contracting. And so we're going away against our natural, you know, way to be and as human beings.
You were saying that, you know, that we're caught in this default setting, and it's like the factory setting of our phones, and it's like we actually need to find our thrive setting. It's like there's another setting that exists within us, and it's like, how do we tap into that? And perhaps we tap into that through cacao and opening our minds and our hearts and going, right, that's what it is. Or perhaps it's through intentional yoga or meditation, or a combination of these things. But it's like, yeah, how do we get to that thrive setting of expansion and growing and developing, and not just caught up in those factory settings? I think there's a really interesting sort of metaphor around that.
Yeah. And I think also, yeah, we have these phones now that we upgrade, you know, like, well, it used to be yearly, now they're trying to get us to do longer. But generally, most people upgrade things, you know, after a certain level of time, because the tech is old. So, you know, if you want to keep up with the times and you want to be at the highest potential of living with these things, you know, to kind of upgrade them, or, you know, your car MOT every year, so you make sure it's working at its best potential. But yet a lot of people, we're not taught to do that for ourselves, you know, like on a yearly basis or whatever, kind of really reflect and be like, yeah, am I living my best, you know, my best self, or are the things around me serving me, or could I do something to kind of upgrade, yeah, the way I'm thinking or acting?
And there's this sort of, it reminds me a little bit, you know, about New Year's resolutions. Often we go, right, I'm going to go do this year. And I noticed last year a lot of people talked about New Year's reflections, and how can I reflect on the year that I've had and go, well, do I want to keep doing that, or do I want to change it? And what might I do to enable that change to happen? I guess that's a little bit like an MOT. And one of the things they talk about in physical intelligence is an MOT of the body, to notice, where is our tension sitting? Where's our pain sitting? And so how can we focus our breath into those spaces to create shifts, perhaps of energy, to open it up and to move it out of the system? So there's something really interesting about taking the time to tune into ourselves and notice what bits of us need that upgrade, whether it's upgrade in our thinking or upgrade in our physical way of being as well, because it's not just about our thoughts, it's about, you know, our bodies as well. How do we upgrade our bodies in this? And that's not saying that, you know, we're trying to get to a top level of something, but it kind of is. We're trying to get to that best level of self, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess just it's like about living life fully. Like, you know, one thing that I think we've all realized is life is, well, we always knew life is precious, but it can be fleeting. And, you know, it's out of our control, like, you know, mostly. Like, we all of a sudden, you know, everything got taken away from us for a certain level of time, and we had to live in a certain way. And, you know, in that sense, it's like, this isn't a dress rehearsal, you know, like, if we really want to get the most out of life, like, just grab it with both hands. And like, what I always think, I love the coaching question, like, what if money or resources weren't an issue, what would you love to do? You know, what would get you jumping out of bed in the morning and just being like, wow. And I have to say, like, I've always loved, you know, my career in surgery and anesthetics, but yeah, like working with the cacao and knowing that, you know, each thing that I was doing, the events, or, you know, the cacao ceremonies, or working one-to-one, it was assisting people with connecting to that, you know, to their heart's desire, and actually realizing that we can, you know, if we are dreaming something and it gives us that feeling of being lit up, and it fills us with this feeling, you know, this kind of feedback from the body, then we can achieve that. There's going to be a way that we can, but it's about really kind of moving away from potentially these default settings in our brain and our, therefore, our actions and beliefs, and actually, you know, first of all, getting a vision of how it looks and a sense of how we all feel and show up in these scenarios that we really want to have in our lives. And then kind of like, you know, what do you call it, like reverse engineering the things that we need to do in order to do that. And one of the things is, yeah, like the thoughts we allow ourselves to have, and the feelings in that creates, and then, yeah, like building up these ways of living that then reinforce that, which I feel like, this is my biggest passion with working the cacao, because I think some of us will self-sabotage, certain things. I'm learning this, like putting myself out there now and doing things like this. There'll be things that come up that you almost feel like you have no control over, because it's a subconscious kind of protector that comes in, and it will shut you down, or it tries to hold you back. Like our brain wants to keep us safe, and it will do anything it can to do that sometimes. And so I feel like, having the work with the cacao, it allows us to kind of work with our own body's kind of hormones, and bring ourselves into that state. I guess it's all about the state that we are in order to kind of move ourselves towards our highest future potential.
And so the cacao allows us to get closer to that state, so we can really explore that potential and move in that way, and kind of really go into that different space, that new space. And in doing so, allows us to kind of tap into those visions, and then, as you said, follow that vision, and follow, you use that word bliss, and I love that word bliss. Follow the bliss. What's the thing that's happening in our world that's giving us a sense of bliss, and then following that, going with that, and seeing where it takes us without, I guess, a sense of attachment, and going, well, I have to arrive there, but going, that's my journey to there, and if I arrive somewhere else, let's explore that somewhere else as well.
And and I think, like, over the time that I've worked with many people, like hundreds of people now, with this method. I feel like this is a unique method that I've created, with my hypnotherapy, with the coaching, with that experience that I've had, working in the cardiac and neurosurgery, like all of the different the procedures that I've witnessed that have helped me see, there's this wisdom, this, invisible intelligence we have in our body. And then kind of, anytime I want to kind of develop something or design something, I work with the cacao, because my mind might not necessarily allow me to go there, just my mind alone, especially when I've worked with some of the doctors I've worked with, and the what's the word, the flack I've got from what I'm kind of moving into, that can hold me back, and these things. But when I kind of come from that space of like anything's possible, and really driving from my passion and bringing together everything, there's always something special that comes up. And I think so. I've worked with so many people with this, and I think the meditations that I do allow them to really connect to themselves. I connect people to their highest self, and so that is the invisible intelligence. And most people break down emotionally, in a good way, but most people realize how much they beat themselves up, or actually how amazing they are. And I think when we look ourselves in the mirror, we can have such a disconnect. And a lot of people have this self-loathing even, or a definite lack of self-worth and self-love. And so we're not able to really connect to ourselves when we're attaching in that way from the mind. But when you connect to yourself in the way through the meditation, it's like it's coming back home, it's coming back to love. And I feel like it's the deepest connection of self-love practice that I've ever come across. And it has beautiful, profound effects. I've worked in I was living my dream life before the pandemic with this. And this is the thing, I just opened my heart, and I was like just following what I love to do, and really wanted to help people. And it opened so many doors for me. I work now at Glastonbury every year, and I share the cacao ceremonies there. Like, I love festivals, so I'm always at festivals doing it, and it's allowed me to do that. It's allowed me, I do my transformation retreats in Ibiza and Guatemala, and creating these really immersive, transformational experiences for people. And then I was flown out to Thailand to be a guest coach on a massive retreat in Thailand. And that felt, I felt so just wowed by all of that. And so I went in and did a cacao ceremony, and these were not my typical kind of type of clients. You know, they were big kind of city workers, you know, CEOs and execs, and these multi-million-pound companies potentially, and more men than women. And usually I work with women, so that was way out my comfort zone. But I kind of went with it, and I just trusted. And actually, most of that group ended up, you know, just releasing a lot of emotions, and pretty much all the men. And they were really surprised at how it allowed them to connect to themselves in a way that they never connected before, which was really, and this, I mean, I've experienced this in, you know, my teachers' cacao ceremonies as well. And yeah, it's powerful stuff. It's beautiful.
And there's just something, so there's a real drive and passion here that I'm hearing with you, where you're just kind of going, I love this stuff, and I'm just going to keep doing it and keep doing it, and see where it takes me, and take the opportunities that arrive from it. And it makes me think about how we can sort of tune into what is the thing that we love, you know, what's the thing that we really enjoy that brings us bliss, and how can we give ourselves permission to lean into that? Because it feels like you've just gone, this is me and this is what I'm doing. Yeah, this was my life and what I did, and now this is my life. And it's like you haven't thrown anything away. You've just allowed yourself to build upon it, and then you're allowing that to enable your, I guess, your lifestyle to continue in that way. Because, you know, I've known you as somebody who loves festivals and goes to festivals, but now it's like, well, I can do that and I can do my work. And as I say that word work, I sort of go, do you think of it as work or as play? How do you describe it to yourself?
No, I mean, it doesn't feel like work at all. I mean, I guess the work part of it, element of it is I've put myself, I'm stepping into a role that I've never known before. You know, I've gone from working on aesthetics to organizing events, like practically, like the retreats are just phenomenal. Like it feels like work potentially sometimes leading up to it, because there's so much to do. And I've took on a lot. And, you know, again, like, I think sometimes you need to reflect to realize, wow, that was huge what I did. And, you know, I feel I all the things tend to come into place to assist it. But then on the retreat, it's just pure bliss, like all the time. And just this open-hearted, you know, that you've kind of brought together a group, you've set the environment to assist transformation and beautiful change, and everyone is just experiencing it and getting so much from it. It's just, and then leaving it is just like, oh my God, when can I do this again? You know, it's just amazing. And I feel like everyone has that potential, and that's the thing. And I feel like the reason it hasn't been like a straight thing for me, you know, it's been like 10 years now. You know, it was 2012 when I discovered cacao, and it, you know, and it just shook my world, and I wanted to learn more. My first cacao ceremony, I actually collaborated with a woman I know who does like these sound healing journeys. And I love her, and I've always worked with her kind of doing different things. So it felt comfortable to do it. But I mean, I had a piece of paper in front of me and I was shaking, like just with my little prompts. And it was awful. I really struggled with it, and I found it so hard. And I never forget that one time. And I was like, I can't do this. This is not me, you know, and all of the mind stuff. And then, you know, with guidance from other people or whatever, like realized, you know, this is a new skill. This is like a whole new area. And it's just about taking time. And one of the things I would say to anyone is it's about the why we're doing it, not necessarily how. The more we focus on the why, and for me, my why was, I wanted to share this with as many people as I could, because I was like, this has changed my life. This is amazing. It's just it's chocolate, you know, we all can access this, you know, it's amazing. And so that was my thing. And also, you know, I was told that I went from hopeless to total hope.
Yeah.
You know, I had no answers, no help provided for me. And from being able to access the answers within myself, and access this, our bodies have this healing potential, but we just need to give it all the things it needs, you know, and remove, I guess, the things that are creating this hostility within ourselves. And I learned all of that, you know, and so, yeah, I just think the why was really strong for me. And again, it's like, not saying that I've got it all in place now, because I paused my business when we went into the pandemic, and I went back to my career, you know, and I did 1 year I struggled with it, and physically it was so demanding. Like the hours were unreal, but obviously because we were doing emergency critical surgery, and this one hospital I was in, there was multiple different NHS hospitals coming together and all just doing these surgeries. It was, sometimes you didn't have a place to eat. People were sitting on the floor eating, down the stairs eating, like next to the toilets eating, because we had to socially distance. And so we were working these crazy hours, to kind of what do you call it, like staff all of the surgeries. Not many breaks and things. So my health was really challenged, and I knew from before that was not how I work well, but I just did it because I needed to do it. I felt so I really my health then started to kind of unwind a bit. And so I've ended up having, the pain coming back, and certain health issues presenting themselves. So it's interesting. Yeah, again, now I'm like, okay, so I'm going down the steps again, reconnecting, listening to my body, like what's going on here, what did I not give myself? What was I kind of blocking out and not listening to? There was warning signs. And then and just going on this healing journey again, and still again, I think the cacao has really helped me. Interestingly, I didn't have time for the cacao most of the time when I was working in the theatre setting. It was just coffee and things on the go, and just not having time to reflect. It was just one of those things. But I'm back on that journey again of like really going deep, self-awareness, realizations as to how to kind of move forward.
And it's really interesting, how you talked about time, giving yourself time, that it took 10 years, because often people will go, they won't notice that time that you've been on and that journey. They just kind of see you arrive. They go, oh, this is what you do. But, you took time to get there. You also took time out on that journey. And the idea of, how do we give ourselves what we need so we can have that correct environment to flourish in? How do we remove what's blocking or what's toxic to that environment? And how, by going back into work, you're able to go, okay, I'm going back to do something that's good and that I want to do. But in that going back, I can recognize and reflect upon, okay, this isn't my space. I can do this for now, but this isn't my space because of what it causes in terms of the environment, I guess, and the restrictions that cause your system to go back into something that you need to then reheal it from. So that's just like, and that's so important for people to hear, that it takes time to do stuff and that we can go back. But when we go back, notice, reflect, tuning to what the body's saying to us, the information it's giving us, so that we can then move forward. And keeping in mind that, that big why, as Simon Sinek would say, what's your why? What's that purpose? What's that vision of what we want to create?
Yeah.
So we haven't really touched on the ceremonies themselves, and time's running away with us.
I
feel like what we'll do, Lisa, is we'll come back and we'll talk about ceremonies. Maybe after the summer, when you've had a couple of your big events, and we can talk about the sort of the power of the ceremony and what people can get from it, and maybe a little bit about how you might lead somebody through that. But how can we get hold of you? People listening to this, watching this, and they're going, I want to try some of this out. This seems interesting to me. Or this is open little gateway of exploration. How do we get hold of you?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram, or all the things. Lisa Fearon Coaching, and the cacao, that my brand of cacao is called Amor Cacao. So anything cacao related and around the ceremonies, if you look at the Amor Cacao page, I actually have an open group as well called Amor Cacao that people can join. We always talk about like the power of cacao and lots of different things, to kind of educate on that. And then, I have my cacao ceremonies once a month in London. So the next date is the 26th of, we're in May now. May. So that will be happening in London. And that's kind of like, it's a 2-hour session, and it's kind of talking about the power of cacao and giving a bit of insight into how it will work. and then bringing the group together and kind of guiding people to set their intentions, and through the meditation and visualization process, then allowing them to connect to their higher self and see how they're guided. And yeah, really beautiful way of then really getting to know what it's about.
Sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to my next session with you. But until then, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us on Fan the Flames Live. Really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us and sharing your journey and your wisdom. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.